This is Marketing Uncomplicated. Hi, everybody, and welcome back. I have Chris, who is the Convergence Alchemist, a SaaS message market fit specialist and conversion copywriter. He worked 10 years as a software engineer in industrial automation, then took a sharp turn to enter the digital marketing world as UX lead at the usability testing startup Conversion Crimes. I love this name. And previously at the conversion design agency Zeta Labs. Chris has been working as a copywriter and a conversion rate optimization specialist for the online brand since 2016. Welcome to the conversation, Chris. It's so good to have you.
Hey, Sasha. Awesome to be here. Looking forward to this.
Likewise. So let's take a little bit of a step back and talk about how you got involved in this dynamic of the marketing arena and really specializing in this particular lane.
So it's a very intricate and also kind of selfish story. So I basically started out as a software engineer, as you said, in a completely different field, industrial automation. So imagine those automatic assembly machines that you see in factories that basically replace manual operations. So I was programming those, was very much like logical programming, but there was also a lot of user experience design, because I was also designing the human machine interfaces that operator used to command those machines. The only thing was basically what I stumbled on after school, just because in my area back in Italy where I'm from, that was what most people do, technical electrotechnical jobs. At the same time, I also had a band. I'm a drummer, been playing drums for like 30 years. And so at the time I thought, damn, it's always hard to get like time to go on tour with my band. I have to ask for time off 3 months in advance. So let me look online for how to make money online. So I started looking at a couple of things. I tried a lot of stuff. Amazon FBA business, where I was selling yoga straps. I tried SEO blogging, a lot of different things, but nothing really stuck until I actually stumbled on copywriting, and I was instantly hooked by the psychology that's behind it, the understanding of decision-making process that you have to get. And I was impressed by what you could achieve just by writing a couple of words on a page that people could read and take some kind of action. So started studying that on the side, evenings, as I was still at my full-time job for a couple of years. And then in 2018, I decided to take the plunge. I also moved from Italy to the UK, where I'm living now, and I started doing it full-time. Then a couple of things led to another. I stumbled on this agency, did some UX work for them for a couple of years, learned a lot about UX research. And I found some intersections there between the user experience research that you do to understand how people use products and the conversion research that you do to understand how people make decisions and convince them to buy something. So after that, I decided to go back on my own, which is when I built Conversion Alchemy, my current business, in 2021, I think. And since then, I've been helping B2B SaaS companies try to convert more of their prospects into buyers, whether on their website, through email, or even just writing sales collaterals. And I've been enjoying it a lot so far.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a very interesting background to come from the engineering aspect of things, but obviously being very technical in that sense. I mean, it's like you're really behind the scenes, and then now you're in the forefront with copywriting. So that is really interesting, but obviously a nice dance between connecting, the art world of, you being in a band and how music moves people, and at the same time how copy can also move people, right? And really make that connection to want to convert into the direction that we all as marketers are looking to help raise conversions for other products and services.
Yeah.
One of the things that you touched on, which is really interesting to talk about what this conversion is, and I really want to start by talking about the customer journey. And we know today that the customer journey, and has been for a very long time, non-linear, an
Mm,
aspect of, back in the days it was always like the awareness, then they're really getting to know you as a brand, and then all of a sudden they hit, the point of time where they want to purchase, and then they become an evangelical and they tell all their friends about it and so on, right?
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, because then Google a couple of years ago came out with what is deemed as their messy middle. There is no longer just print, billboards, TV, radio. There's a whole way of people to get to know you as a product or service
Yeah.
just based on what industry you're in. So really, let's talk about that in connection to conversion and copywriting as you move through that funnel.
Yeah, totally. And nowadays there's even AI. There's search on our AI platform that brings you to several websites, right? So you're totally right. It's not linear anymore, and that's why I think the foundations of good conversion copy or any sales copy that has to accomplish a specific action for an audience that finds you is to really, you have to understand their journey, but most importantly you have to join the conversation that they're having inside their heads. And that means a couple of things. First, you need to, rather than just telling them this is what we do, this is how we do it, first you have to match their expectations and their motivations for finding you. And that's one of the biggest points that I always try to convey to my clients when I write copy. The first job of the first section of your homepage, it's not to just throw them the product that you're selling, it's to actually try to join the conversation that they're having in their heads, so that they understand, okay, this is for me. Now my next decision is to keep scrolling, even if it's not to buy right away. I'm gonna keep scrolling, gonna learn more about this, and I'm gonna stick to the page. So as far as the journey, the first step, I think it's important to join that conversation and match that motivations that they have when they land the page.
Yeah. I love that you bring up the website, because I think, just as marketers, we've probably worked with a lot of companies in various industries that are building websites, and they have this idea that, they really want to talk through this esoterical concept of like what they do, and the main headline up on the page all of a sudden is just so confusing and doesn't really speak to what they sell. I mean, it's almost in the process of like what I like to say, if you sell bikes, tell people you sell bikes, not the wind that blows through their hair, because you're not
Yeah.
selling the wind. Yes, you're selling the experience of whether you're selling a dirt bike or just, a bike to go from, your home to the groceries. It's very different. Or for a triathlon who wants to buy a bike for his competition, but don't over confuse and over exaggerate what you're actually selling. So I think simplicity is key. I mean, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, totally. And simplicity, but I would also add the fact that, especially when it comes to B2B and more of technical spaces, it's important to be simple, but not overly simple. And what I mean is that simplicity removes complexity entirely. But on the other hand, when you are clear, which is slightly different, you make that complexity more understandable, which means that for the right people, even if your messaging is complex for some other people, for the right people, it's the right message at the right time and with the right sophistication, right language. So yes, you have to be simple, but for the right people and with the right language, which doesn't mean that it's simple for everyone.
Yeah, yeah. What have you found? Because I'm assuming you do dig into a lot of data in terms of like testing and learning of the copy that you put out into the world. What really has come out in the years that you've worked with, content and the support of conversion, that you're like, this is the formula, but
Mhm.
obviously it's different when it relates to the actual industry and the actual customer and the ideal customer profile that you're going after.
Yeah. As far as what works well, I always like to think in terms of frameworks rather than formulas. So a lot of companies, maybe copywriters who use, the classic PIS formulas or 4Ps. Okay, they have a message, then they frame it in this like pretty rigid structure. The way that I like to think about
And
using,
unpack the four P's, by the way, because people listening
yeah,
might not know what those are.
I think the 4Ps are promise, proof, um, picture, and proof.
Okay.
No, picture and push. The final
And
one is
push.
taking action. So it's basically And there's also AIDA, attention, interest, desired action. So different ways of organizing your copy, so that it basically follows some principle of psychology that people use to make decisions, right?
Yeah.
But the way that I like to think of it is rather than being more rigid with these formulas, think about a more of like flexible, dynamic framework. And the simplest way that I've used and I've tested and I see work well and gets result, that even early stage companies can use to organize their copy, is 3 simple areas. The first one, motivation, as I mentioned, match what their desired outcomes or maybe their problems that brings them to the page, the triggers, match what those are.
So like the motivation in terms of like what are they either lacking in life or
Yeah,
need in life, or maybe even don't know that they need until they discover you
yeah,
in a way,
exactly.
right? Mm-hmm.
The simplest way that I've heard about how to write the first section of the page, I think it comes from Matt Lerner, who is a growth expert in B2B, and he said, let your copy complete the phrase "I want to," and
Yeah.
then follow it. Right? I want to, I don't know, double the productivity of my team, something like that.
Yeah.
That could be like double your productivity. Could be a headline of your homepage. So that's motivation. The second section is the value.
Oh,
So
you have like the thing I want to, but you don't actually put I want
yeah,
to
you
on the
don't put "I
website.
want to."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's just to help you frame
Yes.
it and
Yeah.
write it right. Um, Second is value. So what's the value that you offer to people? And that can mean first letting them understand in what category you sell your product, what you are exactly. So that's when you mentioned earlier, like, be direct, tell them what you are. That's like the value. We are this and we do it this unique or better or different way. And then you can go into the specific features that allow for that, or different ways of doing things. So that's the value, motivation, value. The last one is anxiety, which is super important one, especially in B2B when you have very high switching costs and companies have to think about replacing their current product with you. So long sales cycles and all that. So anxiety section is all about using social proof, but also addressing objections proactively. So being the first one that tells them, you might have this objection. This is how we address it, right? With a product or even just with your messaging, you could frame it. And finally, after the anxiety, there's the call to action. So motivation, value, anxiety, and call to action. Those are the biggest Lego blocks that you could have on a page, and you could test different variants inside of that. So I think rather than thinking of formulas for each specific piece of copy, think of your overall framework and how you can manage inside of these 3 areas.
Yeah. No, I mean, thank you for that. That was really great in terms of unpacking that, and super important to understand, how we create the right formula to move forward. Um, and I do like how you talk about the I want to. I love that you phrase that, because it's similar to even when somebody introduces themselves, it's, I help, right?
Yeah.
For their
Your
product or
pitch.
service. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a nice combination, because if you think about, if you are a brand owner, or if you're a product owner or a service owner and you have a company, how do you explain what you do? And that is in the simplest form. You obviously help somebody achieve X goals. So to your point, when it comes to writing copy, I want to, really also translates that message in a very nice, way,
Mm,
from talking to people to then having people landing on your website and actually discovering you.
yeah.
So
Totally.
when it relates to, SaaS is obviously, a very, I wouldn't necessarily want to say that it's tricky, but in the aspect of, really looking and digging into, the difference between B2C and B2B, there's a
Mm,
longer tail cycle. So it is completely different in that sense. But in specific, SaaS, to your point, when they are moving and migrating off of one platform onto another, it really is that tipping point to understand where they are in the business, whether it's, needing a new platform for extended growth, or this isn't just, they signed up to a platform, it doesn't work for them anymore. But what have you seen, that has really stood out from the standpoint of conversion to really support that sale, to close the gap from
Mm.
being X amount of months or maybe even a year or whatever it is?
Yeah, so the first thing that I always tell my clients is 70% of my work is going to be research. So that's where I spend most of the
Thank
time.
you for saying that. Yeah.
And that's because I want to understand these people as much as possible. I want to get inside their heads, and especially, as
Yes.
you said, B2B, different touch points, lots of touch points, and also different decision makers. So you might have the check signer, so the people who actually signs the check, the manager or the influencer or the actual user that uses the platform. So
So
you have
there's
to
almost like
understand.
more people involved in the
Yeah,
chain of like actually making the purchase.
yeah, it's
Hmm.
a decision making unit. So decisions don't really happen in silos. It's more of like a collaboration to get to the final decision.
Yeah.
So we try to understand as much as possible of each of those, and then we also understand, okay, how are you when we speak to each of these customers for our clients. So we try to understand, how do you make decision in concert with these other people, how do these decisions happen, and we try to map out that journey with our messaging, whether it's on the website or emails or even sales collaterals that happen and get used in the first touch points. We try to create as much as possible of a cohesive experience so that they can actually get that message uniform, consistent, clear, and actually sticks with them.
Yeah, no, and one thing that I thank you for that again. And one thing that I want to kind of dig in a little more, do white papers, blogs, and all of these like leadership, documents truly help from that conversion standpoint? Because I've always wondered, a lot of effort is injected into that. And it is maybe from the top of the funnel from a conversion and supports, as you mentioned, from a social proof standpoint. But how
Mhm.
much is that really playing a role in someone's conversion?
Yeah, they do play a role. It's not something that I do personally, but obviously, when you're looking at the overall go-to-market marketing strategy, those play an important part. Which is, if you understand that your prospects need more education before at the actual conversion point,
Yeah.
then you need to know, okay, what materials do they need to see, what kind of information do they need to learn before they actually make an informed decision. Also, because you don't want the wrong people converting, right? So you don't want people who maybe are not as aware as you want or as sophisticated as you want get in touch and wasting your time and their own time, right? So you want
Yeah.
to qualify them, educate them as much as possible, and obviously, at each stage, there's the right offer, the right lead magnet, the right downloadable PDF that can help you for that.
Yeah, no. What do you find to be the biggest gap when you start to work with clients and you talk a lot about like, you want to come in, you want to do the research, you want to unfold. And I really like that you say that because the client is the one thing that changes everything. And a lot of people think marketing is going to be different industry to industry, and that's not the case, because all things that we put into market and all the channels that we use are similar. But it really is walking a mile in the customer's or client's shoes to really understand, their motivation, their gaps, and so on and so forth. What do you find in recent times has been this overall miss, right? I mean,
Mm.
in the sense of, why, when somebody hits market, what is the gap there in terms of the messaging of maybe why people aren't getting it? Is it
Mm-mm.
because they haven't walked a mile in the customer's shoes? What is that like essential missing piece?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the companies that I work with don't really have a system for actually doing research, or they do it very sporadically, or they do very surface level research like NPS score, or maybe they ask about product usage, which is all good for improving the product, but it doesn't really help you understand the decision making process of these people to get more of them. And the other, I think, gap in messaging is the lack of differentiation, but not as far as the product goes, is the lack of a strong strategic narrative, which means the having a solid point of view on the industry that actually differentiates you, rather than just having your product differentiates you. So having a strong point of view, a strong insight on why you're doing what you do and what you're seeing in the industry done wrong or by customers, really helps you make have your point come across much stronger than just telling people we have this product that does these things differently from other. When you have the point of view backing you up, it actually supports everything else, and people actually start believing you, start getting curious about your mission, about what you do. So I think probably that point of view, lack of the point of view, is one of the gaps that I'm seeing.
Yeah. Do you believe in researching other industries to borrow from?
Yeah, totally. I used to work now, not anymore or rarely. I used to work with e-commerce as well. And a thing that I've learned from e-commerce was since in e-commerce you have a lot of products, often navigation, you need to optimize the navigation. So that's what I used to do at the usability testing startup. Used to do a lot of user tests to look, okay, how are users actually finding this specific product among hundreds and hundreds of products? Where do they go on the navigation? Where do they click? What do they think when they get on the page? What's the first click that they complete? And so I try to apply that to the decision making process for SaaS as well, so
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
B2B. So that's why I often look at optimizing the navigation and the sitemap when I do my messaging and copywriting projects, because I think that, even like, if you think about it, when someone lands on a homepage, one of the first things that everybody does, it's hovering on that navigation menu and seeing, okay, I see solutions. I'm going to hover on the solution page,
Mm-hmm,
and I'm
mm-hmm.
going to see, okay, these guys do
What
use
do they
cases for
offer?
all. Yeah, exactly. And that's because I think when you observe people, there's a kind of a lot of us are a bit scared of committing to even the first click on the page, so they hover because it's not a big commitment. If they
Yeah,
see something that's interesting, then okay, I might click on
that's
another page, or
interesting.
I might go deeper into the navigation. So yeah, I'm trying to get that from my past experience in UX, and I
Yeah.
think it's totally important to learn from what other industries are
Yeah.
doing well.
That's interesting that you mentioned that people are even nervous to make the first commitment of even just clicking on the website, so
Yeah,
they hover. So it's even to the point of, like, when developing your UX of the website, make sure that when you hover there is an immediate drop down menu versus like somebody having to take that
yeah,
particular action. And obviously,
yeah.
go ahead.
And not even you so those huge monster menus that cover half the page that
Oh
you
yeah, you
can't
see a lot of
escape.
that in S and SaaS platforms,
Yeah,
though.
yeah,
By the way, what do
yeah.
they call those? They call that like the mega,
Mega
I think
menus. Yeah,
the mega menus. Yeah, where it's
yeah,
like you
yeah.
hover and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my
You're
god, like
stuck.
I know I wasn't gonna commit and now I really don't want to commit because I'm
you have to
overwhelmed.
you have to reload the
Yeah.
page.
Yeah, totally. It's a bit much. I agree with you. But it really boils down to naming convention as well.
Hmm.
Like when you, because you're right. I think the behavior, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you land on the page, you may want to check solution services because you're like, do they match my need? And then it's immediate to pricing, right?
Yeah, yeah, and
So even that language you use for your services and your solutions is super important.
yeah, you have to find the balance between in UX, there's a rule that now I don't remember the name, but it's basically you have to find the balance between what's already known by most people, what most people are used to, and what's actually a better fit for you. So, for example, you have the classic pricing page. You can change it, call it packages, you can call it offer. In some cases, it might make sense. Maybe if it's a SaaS that also does services or consulting, but usually pricing it's pretty identifiable for everyone, so it works pretty well in every case. So I would be wary of changing that language unless you have a very strong reason why from research.
Yeah.
And same with solutions, use cases. What's most important is actually matching the personas in your sub navigation. For example, when you have, I don't know, product name for marketing or for procurement or for IT. When you match those specific personas because you know that you are speaking to them,
Yeah.
then that's important language that you need to match.
Yeah. I know this isn't a direct correlation, so roll with me on this because this is also B2C, but if you may not have been in this world, or you may, have dated somebody that was in this world, but if you think about nail polishes, and I think one brand called Etsy, they do really well with their naming conventions because all of a sudden you connect your moods to that day
Mm.
of what they have named the color of their nail polish, and then you're like, I'm going to go with this, right? Or if it's like sassy red, or like, firecracker orange, or like whatever it is, like I think that really has helped them from the standpoint, but it's something to learn from. So this is like what we talk about from like borrowing other industries. What are you creating? Granted, it's in a B2C industry, but this could be the same point of like, how are you naming something that is connecting them to their pain point and their
Mm.
motivation, versus naming it what it actually is, but getting them to kind of tip over into, okay, yeah, this may be the solution for me.
Yeah, yeah, and it also connects to the point of view discussions that we were having earlier. So when you have strong language, maybe a bit bolder, maybe a bit more in you, like a more unique voice and tone, even in your product names, that helps you differentiate, helps you match what your specific audience wants. So yeah, language is important almost everywhere: product naming, navigation, and messaging all over the
Yeah.
place.
I mean, obviously then, I mean, rolling into like the psychology part of somebody converting, because this connects to what you've been talking about from a research standpoint. How variant Okay, so we have the conversion of what makes somebody convert, which I think is an overall psychological decision making process, but then there's layers to it as well, correct?
Yeah, so the way that I see it, which is also the way that I like to organize my research, which is kind of a system that I try to install in my clients' companies. It's like, think of your research system as kind of like an iceberg. So you have the part outside of the water, which is the surface layer, let's call it. And that's the kind of research material that most companies have access to, which is whether you have sales conversations, recordings, you already have them, but a lot of companies don't use them. Maybe you have reviews on other websites, competitor websites. Those That is all language and voice of customer that you could use to mirror and to actually include in your copy, or even competitors websites, even though I always recommend don't copy competitors, but you can use their website to deconstruct their messaging, to see what pain points and motivation they are addressing, what type
Hmm.
of audience they are speaking to. So that's surface layer. It's the first layer. Then the second one is more the structural layer, so the UX, user experience layer. So if the first layer is what users say, the second one it's what users do. So you have to understand how they navigate on your website, how they consume the copy. I always like to think, maybe because of my UX background, of people consuming your copy and having to like absorb it. So they have to do some kind of work to consume your copy. So you have to make it as frictionless as possible for them. And the UX research, I always like to look at user interaction data, heat maps. So basically you can see where people click on your website, user recordings. You can see how people move through the website, understand the flow. And that's where I
Hmm.
also get insights for optimizing the navigation, for example. And finally, the deeper layer, which is the one that most companies don't really leverage, is the why users act layer, which is basically the understanding the qualitative insights, speaking with customers, having actual interviews, asking about their decision making process. So understanding the before, during, and after their decisions, um, running qualitative surveys, and all of that. So with these three layers, I think you can have a pretty good map of your customer psychology, how they make decisions, which when you rebuild it into your messaging, it basically automatically helps them go through each of the stage in reverse. So then until to the point that they take that action that you want them to
Hmm.
take.
Hmm. Hmm. Thank you. That's the, and it always goes back to, the website in terms of how people are discovering you. So I think that that's, super interesting to keep testing, right? So it's not that
Mm.
you just launch and you think the floodgates are going to come in, but it's what is the language that's actually being used and how are you converting from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what everybody is talking about in terms of AI, and I think that
Mm.
this is really interesting connection and a conversation with you because the the birth of chat gpt, and all of a sudden everyone's like, oh my gosh, I can write blogs once a day, or I can spit out all this content and I can have it help me write my website copy. But then there was the smackdown of like, no, no, Google's not going to verify your website because it's chat gpt, and we're not going to scroll it, and we're not going to support you with seo as well. So let's talk a little bit of the finite integration of AI and copy to support conversion.
Mm. So yeah, I've seen. So there are a lot of studies that show that humans can't really, not even tools actually struggle to detect AI written copy. Even especially lately with these latest updates, it's pretty crazy. But if you are a copywriter, if you're a marketer with experience, especially if you know your company, you know that if you just prompt ChatGPT to, hey, write me a homepage, even if you tell it, write me a homepage that speaks to this persona with this voice, it's never going to give you good copy. It maybe could be like 60% copy that you can refine on your own, but it's never going to be finalized copy, at least as of yet. Um, so the way that I like to use it is to actually partner with AI from the get-go. So even from the research stage through the strategy and finishing with the writing, I basically always have a chat open. And the most important thing is that you share as much context as possible with it as you can. So I
Yeah.
always try. I have this 4-part framework that I call the PATH framework,
Hmm.
which also stems from empathy, because I like to call it empathy engineering, maybe from my engineering background,
Oh, I like that.
because I think AI in a way can help you empathize with your customers more if you
Yeah.
direct it the right way. So the first step, the P, is the preparation step, which means actually collect any of the research that you have. So you need actual real human data, right? You can't just tell the AI that has access to the whole internet to write copy for you, because it's just going to be generic rubbish. So
Hmm.
I always like to use real research, collect all my interview transcripts, survey data, interviews with the team, my client's team, internal interviews. And I try to get as much as possible of that, the internal perspective, the external, so customer and prospect perspective, and the market, competitors perspective. With all of these three, I feed it to the AI. Then the next step is the articulation, which is basically shaping the AI to become almost your persona, right? So I typically have one chat that is my marketing strategy chat for myself to generate ideas, and then I create separate chats that are the AI persona chats. Could be one for every customer persona, for example. And those chats never break out of character. That's important. You have to instruct them to never break character, so that you can actually ask questions as if they were your actual customers. But the good thing is that it's not randomly generated personas. They are generated through the real research that you've done, right? So they have access to real transcripts of interviews that you've done, so they know the language, they know more or less the thinking. They can shape their universal access from the internet into much more condensed and specific
Yeah.
persona.
When you, just to interrupt you for a second there, when you
Yeah,
say don't break the character, you're saying when you're inputting that into AI or ChatGPT, you maintain like a block of who this character is.
yeah. So with the simple prompt, you can basically instruct it, don't break character, like make sure that you stay in character, that you don't break unless I tell you. And for example,
Yeah.
in ChatGPT uses markdown language, so that's helpful for instructing it. Claude uses XML tags, which is slightly different way. So when I speak with this persona, if I want to update it or to have it speak outside character, I basically have, I don't know, brackets saying aside, and then I instruct it. So then it knows that I'm not speaking to it as if I was speaking to a client, to a
Mm-hmm.
customer, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and now, like, even you don't need to do like complex prompt engineering. Like, you could, AIs are getting to that point where simple prompt, as long as it's slightly structured and comprehensive, you can get pretty good results.
Yeah.
So when you have these personas, you have your marketing that gives you ideas, your marketing chat that gives you ideas. Then the next step is testing, which is where you can actually use these personas to, I don't know, tell them, okay, a simulation of kind of a user test. You can tell them, you stumble on this page, and you can either share a screenshot of the page with the chat, or literally the pieces of copy that you have. Like, first you see this headline, then you stumble on this paragraph. What do you think? What are the questions that pop up in your head? What objections do you have? What should we answer that we didn't really speak about in this copy that you might find helpful? And you can even test pieces of copy. So you can paste a piece of copy or different variants and ask it, okay, which one would you think would help you or inform you or help you convert at this
Mm-hmm.
specific stage? And they can give you scores. You can ask different kind of things. Obviously, it's not going to be 100% accurate, but at least I think, especially for startups who don't really have access to a lot of research or don't really have the funds to invest in maybe consultancies or even platforms that do these kind of things, even getting to 60-70%, it's already golden. And a lot of
Yeah.
people don't use it. Like, for $20 a month for ChatGPT, it's pretty crazy, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. When you work between, because I like to work between Claude and ChatGPT, because Claude is also not. I think it's important to note, especially for those that are working with proprietary information, that Claude is not an open AI like ChatGPT is.
Mm.
But in the essence of sometimes ChatGPT being more in the forefront, they're collecting data a lot faster than a platform like Claude. Is that
Yeah.
an accurate statement?
Yeah, totally. Also, I just started using Gemini, Google Gemini. I was using it in another platform called, it's the more of like the developer AI platform, is called Google AI Studio. I was using Gemini inside of that because
Okay.
first it was free. Like, you didn't need to pay for Gemini 1.5, which has the biggest context window, so the biggest memory for sharing documents, and that was super helpful when I was having lots of transcripts to share. I started using the normal Gemini now just because they included Gemini 2 and 1.5 in the Google Workspace account, so that's pretty handy. And that's also private, so that's good to know. They don't use the materials that you share to improve their models.
Mm-hmm.
But I also use Claude is a great one for writing. It's much better, I think, and much slightly more human than ChatGPT at writing. So I
Mm-hmm.
use that for like the first drafts or even some of the strategy documents. But then with my team, to do things a bit more at scale, just because Claude has got daily limits as well that I typically hit
Yeah,
ver-
in seconds.
pretty fast. So I like to use platforms. There's this one called Team GPT, where you can basically connect it to your OpenAI or Anthropic API, and you can share chats with your team. So everyone can use the same voice and tone. You can share project knowledge. And
Perfect.
so I can do things at scale as well, which is useful for companies, especially marketing departments, so they can have the same standardized, consistent voice.
Yeah. I love that because, there was a lot of fear, all of a sudden when AI started to come out that, some jobs are going to be obsolete and so on and so forth. And this, in some cases, may be true, but I think in other cases, if we are learning to implement and work with AI today, then it's going to only help us support, because there is always going to be a need, I think, for a humanization kind of process and procedure, again, depending on the industry, but specifically talking about, um, copywriting and conversion, we're still needing to do a certain amount of research to then be able to input it into AI and support AI to give us and spit back what we need.
Yeah,
At least where we stand today, maybe in 15 years from now, it's going to be completely different. There could probably be voice prompts, whatever. But I think there's always going to be a need to have the humanization support to get to really massage and
yeah,
get the copy to where it needs to be.
yeah. You have to have that human in the loop to first understand humans, then you can have the AI in the middle, and then finally, when it's time to write that final copy, humans, I think, at least for now, are still much better at understanding what works, especially if you're a copywriter or a marketer.
Yeah, they haven't gone into the brainwaves, I guess, yet of all of
Yeah,
us.
yeah. I was thinking in the future, when you were talking about the future, I was thinking maybe in the future they will all have Neuralink from Elon Musk in our brains, and
I
we will
know.
be able to do research just by connecting to the Neuralink of our
Neuralink.
audience.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
That day might come sooner than we think.
Totally.
Well, Chris, this has been an unbelievable, insightful conversation. But before I let you go, I do want to ask, what are three main pointers that you think if somebody is going to be starting, and ensuring to either optimize their copy, start their copy, where to even navigate and start this process and, to
Yeah.
kind of help them get going?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say first, especially if you're a founder or a very small team, try to solidify and crystallize your point of view. What's that unique insight that you have on the market or on your customers or on the alternatives? Why should customers choose you over other approaches even of doing what you do? So I would say first understand that and solidify it and try to inject it in your messaging. Second one is probably, if you don't have your positioning down before actually going into writing copy, try to solidify your positioning, which is
Love
what
it.
you do, who you do it for, how you do it uniquely, better, or differently. And that's not writing, it's not actual copy yet. That comes after, which is before even writing any word, work on your messaging strategy, which is the intersection between the what you do and how you say it. Once you have those three pieces, the strong point of view, the positioning, and the messaging, then the copy almost writes itself, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Chris. This has been amazing. We will, where can we find you, or where can I will tag all of the links,
Hmm.
for everybody to be able to connect with you and find you and, all
Yeah.
that good stuff below.
Yeah, people can find me on my website, conversionalchemy.net. I have a newsletter there, a podcast, which is all about message and market fit. And then I'm mostly on LinkedIn, just nerding out about these things, about AI, messaging, and marketing.
Yeah. So we'll make sure to connect that all below and for you guys to check him out. And again, thank you, Chris, for all of the wonderful insight today.
Also, thank you so much, Sasha.